Hi, welcome back to the McKinnis Family Workshop. My name is Robert McKinnis, and here today we're going to be talking about saws. Now, just about everyone knows what a saw is. However, most people don't know is that it is one of the oldest tools in human history, right behind the hammer and the knife. So it dates back to Neolithic man, also known as cavemen, and back then they would have knives made out of flint. Now, flint was a popular rock to use because you can get really sharp and it is easy to form and make blades out of it. However, few people found out that if you put little notches into your blade so it looks like teeth, it makes it easier to cut things like meat, leather, and wood. And the idea kind of spread around, and they used different materials as well. The most common being flint. After that was obsidian, another type of rock. But in your tropical areas, they would also use seashells, as well as shark teeth. And you can find these little tiny ancient saws all around the globe in caves and early human settlements. So the saw really didn't improve thousands of years later in places like Egypt and Ethiopia when we had our first large civilizations. And back then they would use hardened copper, and eventually they improved it by using bronze. It made its way around the Mediterranean and got hold of by our Roman friends again. And then they improved it by making it out of iron, then later steel, and also making different variations of the saw. So, the most common saw that you will find in just about every single farm homestead around here is the handsaw. It's just used for general cutting in the workshop. The main job that I use it for is making the tenon in our mortise and tenon joint. This little piece right here. So we use the saw and we will cut that out. Then we'll take our mortise hole and we'll put them together and make a nice strong joint. So this type of saw is also known as an open face saw. Some of our other saws here are known as a frame saw. Kind of easy to tell because they have a wooden frame. Their other name is called a bow saw because they are strung together with either a cord, a piece of wire, or in this case, a rod with threads on it. So this type of saw is known as a buck saw. It is used to saw logs to length, also known as bucking. You can easily tell it's a buck saw because it has a handle right here, and you saw it like that, cutting your log to length. And you use it with a tool called a sawbuck. It's pretty much just two crosses of wood put together with some supports, and it would cradle your log for you as you're bucking it. However, I don't have one on the farm here today because one of our neighbors is using it to buck logs for firewood right now. So our frame saws are also some of our cheaper saws. Just because you have a smaller metal blade, because metal's still pretty hard to come upon right now, and then you can easily make the wooden frame yourself. If you have to make a crude one to start out with before you get some actual lumber to make a better frame first, you do that, or you can buy them with a wooden frame already from the store. So we've got some other frame saws. This one has a few names for it. It's known as a Carpenter Saw or a chairmaker saw. It has a very small blade that's flexible. And we use this one to cut curves on wood, kind of like on this piece here. We use it all with that chairmaker saw to make these nice curves. So the nice thing about the chairmaker saw is that we can actually turn the blade to where we need it to help us cut a little bit better. And we would saw it in this type of motion like this. Now if we have a piece that we need to make a sharper turn for, we use this saw known as a coping saw. It's the exact same saw, but it has a lot thinner blade on it. It makes those nice little sharp turns. Now if we have a very sharp turn or a place where we just can't reach with any of our other saws, we use this type of saw known as a keyhole saw. It's very handy for getting into those little nooks and crannies that our bigger saws kind of miss. And these are the main saws that most farms will have. At the very least, they will have a handsaw like this one. Now, we come over here, all of our saws are going to be cutting on the push motion. As you see here that we only get sawdust when I push on the blade. That's where the blades on our teeth are pointing. Then when we saw, we want to make sure that we use the whole length of the blade, allowing the tool to do most of the work for us, and we can cut it quicker. Now with smaller pieces like this, we can easily saw it just right here on a workbench. If we're doing something more specialty, making curves like on a chair or another piece of wood, we'd have to use a vise on the workbench. However, another piece that we can use is called a saw table. Now we've seen this before in some of our past visits. It also kind of looks like a step stool. I sometimes use it as a step stool to get things high up in the rafters in the shop here. But the way you use this little saw table, put your workpiece on top of it, you clamp it down with your knee, locking it into place, and you just take your saw, and then you have a nice surface to saw on. So those are our most common saws. Here in our farm though, we have some specialty saws as well. One being this one right here. It's called a butcher saw. So this is a saw that we use to process animals here on the farm. And you can tell it's a butcher saw by how heavy it is. It's a very heavy saw. And you need that weight to help you to process the meat and cut out different cuts of meat on the animal. So we got our butcher saw there, and then on our wall over here, we have our other specialty saw, and that is a two-man saw. So pretty much you have a handle on one end and a handle on one end, and you have two people, and you would use it to either buck a very large piece of wood, or you'd actually use it to cut trees down. Here on the farm, we have used these to cut trees before. However, the axe is still the preferred method of cutting down trees, but this is slowly starting to grow in popularity. So we have a normal two-man saw. The one over here has a different handle on the one end. And that's actually so that one person can use a saw if you can't find a second person. It's not very fun to use by yourself, but if you have to, you can. And then right here, we have a spare blade right here in case one of them breaks. So a professional person who saws wood is known as a sawyer. So they would be the person going out with the two-man saws and either cutting down trees, they'll be cutting down beams to make for buildings, and even for shipbuilding. And it's a very highly paid and respected trade right now. And it's something that if you want to make a lot of money, that's the trade to go into. So those are the saws that we have in our workshop. Here in the next few weeks, we're actually going to be using them to make a few projects around here. So stay around and hopefully you'll see us use them.